Good morning. I hope everybody's having a good Wednesday. And we're going to try to walk through Measure for Measure, a play that we're all finding a bit problematic. And I think I want to perhaps see if we can discover some reasons why we might be finding it all problematic. First, let's run through with this idea of what's coming up. We'll keep discussing this thing on Friday. Monday, we'll have the quiz. Alfonso will do his presentation first. I will do any wrap up. And then we will start with Henry IV and run through that until the end of the semester. Remember that April 30th has paper 3 due. In class, I call this a problem play, and I'm not sure I ever defined the term. So let's make sure that we are all on the same page and we all know what we're talking about. A problem play confronts difficult social issues. In my adolescent lit class, I talked about young adult novels becoming problem novels. And in my lifetime, we have had problem of the week movies or TV programs where the television drama dealt with a social issue of the time, new one every week, and happily solved it by the end of the hour. The problem is, sorry for using that word here, that difficult social issues are very difficult to solve within the course of an hour or 2 hours, within the course of a single episode or a single play or a single season of a television drama. I think this play confronts some social issues. What should the limitations of civic power be? And what does faith call on people to do? At a Catholic university, I think that that's a significant issue right off the bat. To what extent can one legislate moral behavior? We're shutting down the houses of prostitution. Does that mean prostitution is going to go away? The play, as everybody has talked about in class, certainly breaks the boundaries between tragedy and comedy. And as I have said several times, almost everything Shakespeare wrote after this was a tragedy. Also, I think the play, for us, relies on certain rules that readers may not know. And I'll pick that up at the end of the presentation and talk about it specifically there with a copy and paste from the textbook. Starting out with social issues, the idea of sin and punishment. Vicentio is talking to Juliet. Vicentio at this time is disguised as a priest, and Juliet talks about the fact that the sex acts were mutually committed, and then he says that your sin is of a heavier kind than his. In other words, she is more to blame than the guy. If we keep going, we have the Duke, again disguised as the friar, talking to Isabella about Mariana and the idea that she was supposed to have married Angelo, that her brother was coming with a dowry, and once the dowry got there, they were going to get married. The brother dies in a shipwreck. The dowry goes down with the shipwreck, and Angelo just says, "We're done," and doesn't pay attention to her, doesn't do anything. It's over. He wants the dowry. So once again, we see that women here are not only seen as the worst sinners, we are also seeing women here in this section as sort of property. We're transferring money back and forth. They're kind of a burden. You have to pay for them to be taken into the man's household. And then we have this whole thing about frailty and Isabella saying that women are as frail as mirrors, that, they are 10 times frail, they are soft as their complexions are. This whole list of frailty and women being forced to admit that. or Isabella being forced to admit that women are frail. Angelo's trying to beat that into her. And so I think we have to come to terms with this, and we have to negotiate with the past. Is Vincentio's view about Juliet being more to blame for her condition of being pregnant out of wedlock? Is that his view as the Duke? Is this his view of what a priest should think? Were these the Catholic Church's views of the time? Were these the Church of England views of the time? Were these the views of the majority of uh, people in Shakespeare's time? And I'm not just talking about the woman, the woman being pregnant out of wedlock. When I'm asking those questions, I think we're also taking a look at women being frail. We're taking a look at whether or not it was okay for Angelo to, uh, call off the marriage because the dowry didn't show up. And were these Shakespeare's views? And then we have to really think about, how do we look at these views in 2021? Can we find a way to have them make sense for us and make the play make sense for us in light of views that I don't think any of us really hold seriously? If women are frail, so are men. If the sex act was mutually consensual, then both parties are at fault. The whole dowry and everything is just totally and completely foreign to us. How do we make sense of these views in 2021? Some things that I think we kind of make sense of is Angelo says, "My unspoiled name, the austereness of my life, my vouch against you and my place in the state, will so your accusation outweigh that you shall stifle your own report and smell of calumny." The idea that I've got the power, I'm the guy, everybody will believe me. As for you, say what you can, my faults outweighs your true. I've got the power. My lies will be seen as true more than your truth. I will win if you come out and accuse me of asking you to sleep with me so that I can free your brother. I think that there it's probably a little bit easier to negotiate with the past. We have seen this. We know that there's some additions to the source material. The original source material didn't have a woman who wanted to become a nun. But within the play, and in light of the Me Too movement and everything else, we can see that this is a old issue. And when we're negotiating with the past on this one, it's a little bit easier to, I think, deal with that, but not find any humor in it. It's veering very close to tragedy, as we've said in class several times, because of issues that we recognize in the 21st century. What we don't recognize in the 21st century is the bolded stuff on screen here. Yet hath he in him such a mind of honor, that had he 20 heads to tender down on 20 bloody blocks, he'd yield them up. Before his sister should her body stoop to such abhorred pollution, then Isabella live chaste and brother die. In other words, her chastity is more important than her brother's life. And I think we have a difficult situation here of, again, was that a view that was being held? Was that an extreme view in her that was, when we talked about virtue ethics, was something that was deep in excess of what everybody else did, and it was going way too far, and it was making extremism not be a virtue? Okay. And so, who says that? What kind of person says that? Is she indeed acting as a virtuous agent in this situation? And would it have been different for Shakespeare's time as for our time? Okay. We have the Duke. And one of the things I just want to talk about the Duke is it seems to me that the Duke, in addition to admitting that he allowed prostitution to flourish, seems to be somebody who is out to get revenge. All right. You'll notice that Lucio says you are deceived, and um, okay. My slide's off. I mislabeled some stuff. And I forgot to highlight the second Lucio down here. So anyway, but we've got him saying that Lucio perhaps had some weird habits, that he got drunk frequently, and the Duke is certainly saying, "He shall know you better, sir, if I may live to report you." In other words, you're going to pay for this when I come back to being the Duke. And the Duke certainly seems susceptible to flattery. When Aeschylus says, he was a gentleman of all temperance, the Duke certainly seems much, much happier about hearing that than he was about hearing the report that he was a little bit prone to drink, and perhaps enjoyed seeing the prostitutes as much as the next guy, and all of the people accused of being with the prostitutes in this play. I think some of the humor here comes from the sitcom element that this play kind of sets up. The easiest way for the Duke to deal with this situation would be to walk back into town, to confront Antonio with Angelo, with what he knows, to pardon everybody, and to just try to start saying, look, we're going to govern prostitution, we're going to make it illegal all over, we're going to do whatever it is to make this right. He comes up with this plan. Okay. Craft against vice I must apply. With Angelo tonight shall lie his old betrothed but despised, so disguised shall by the disguised pay with falsehood false exacting, and perform an old contracting. So now we're going to have this trick, we're going to have this disguise thing go on, we're going to play this big long game, and everybody in the audience and us as readers, I think, have to do what we do in 2021. Well, what the heck could go wrong with this? Obviously, everything. But remember, this is the premise of a lot of sitcoms. The plan gets convoluted, a bunch of stupid stuff happens, and then everything sort of works out in the end. Okay? On page 1301, what I just said, I think, is the first paragraph on 1301. Technically, it is a well-tied knot which, in Renaissance theory of tragic comedy, must mediate between extreme peril and happy solution. It even provides an extra bonus, a happy solution for a jilted lady we haven't become acquainted with. So all of this is supposed to get us the happy ending. All right? But the substitution of Mariana for Isabella, it's the most baffling of all the anomalies, according to the person the book quoted. Claudio got Juliet with child when she was fast his wife. By common law statute, which accepted betrothal contracts as binding and pregnancy is still more so, the canonical solemnizing of the ceremony had been postponed, not unreasonably. So everything should have been legal for Claudio and Juliet. There should not have been any threat. And so in Shakespeare's audience, perhaps they were not seeing it as threatening as we are, because there's no way this should have happened. Everything's going to work out because we can't break the rules that badly. All right, and then we have the Angelo And if you look about 3 or 4 lines down, neatly the bed trick makes Angelo do exactly what he sentenced Claudio to death for, but circumstances far more blackening to his character. Isabella's ready acceptance of the Duke's plan therefore strains credibility. The bed trick foils both the sets of generic expectations which are entangled in measure for measure. It prevents the outcome of the play prepares for, but does not mediate a harmonizing comic resolution. Okay? And so I think what we have going here is there are some rules that we're not ready for. Ruth Nevo seems to say that it's kind of screws up the happy ending. We can probably talk about that a little bit more as we go, and whether or not Isabella, in character, should have bought into this play or into the plot. All right. And the other thing, ever so often, I like it when things come together. And I've been reading a book entitled, let's do a quick quotation. There is scarce truth enough alive to make societies secure, but security enough to make fellowships accursed. I think if you look at the footnotes, we're talking about, the idea that there's not enough truth to keep everybody on the same page, but all of this bonding and buying, insisting on bonds, insisting on contracts, kind of breaks up the fellowship. And how do we make this all work? It's everyday's news, yet it's happening all the time. And then if we go, I've been reading The Woman Who Smashed Codes, and it just strikes me that throughout this whole play, we probably should have had William Friedman in the play, just telling people that truth is truth and everything else is, well, you can read the F word on the page. I think we'll wrap it up here today. We'll try to finish this thing up in class on Friday, and we'll kind of go from there.